YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere? This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 16, 2023 NFL predictions. Well, first off, for everybody out there, I want to say, with this time of the year coming up, I want to wish everyone out there a happy holiday season. I hope everyone is going to have a great time, whatever holiday you celebrate, or for the Jehovah's Witnesses. Hope you have a nice few days off with your family if you don't celebrate. But I just wanted to wish everybody a happy holiday season and hope everyone is safe, happy, they enjoy time with their family and friends or whoever they're close with, and they enjoy the football games throughout Christmas Eve and Christmas Day this coming week. But with that being said, I will say for next week's video specifically, the video will probably come out Wednesday. I know I've said before that the videos are coming out on Tuesdays just due to, things that are going on. Next week's video is probably going to come out on Wednesday just because Monday's the holiday, and Tuesday I'll probably take the time to do my stats. So expect the video on Wednesday. So just an FYI for next Wednesday. So, but for this week, for this past week though, for the Fanatic, it was a bounce back week, somewhat straight up. A disappointing, tough week against the spread. So against the spread this past week, I went 6-9-1 against the spread, and straight up I went 10-6. That equals up to 40.6% against the spread, and straight up that equals 62.5%. So overall, I bounced back nicely with a double-digit straight-up week. Definitely a bizarre weekend of how a lot of the picks I had definitely didn't come and go their way. Against the spread picks, who would have thought that the Chargers-Raiders game would have turned into a absolute rear-end kicking that knocked Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco out of jobs. And, who would have thought that one? Tampa, the Jets, Miami. The Jets had 4 total yards of offense through the first half. They had their third lowest total yards in franchise history at like 104 yards of the entire game. That was inept, where I thought with the Dolphins, with how banged up they were, I thought that was going to be competitive or more competitive. Cowboys, Bills, that was a thrashing by Buffalo. That's really got them on a good roll. And I would tell everybody out there, objectively, if the Buffalo Bills make the playoffs, either by winning the AFC East, which is still possible, or getting into the wild card, which I think is more possible as well, I think the Buffalo Bills are the most dangerous team that is not in the playoffs currently right now. But that was a stunner. Philadelphia, Seattle last night, how inept the Eagles were. Shout out to Pete Carroll, though. He's now 8-0 all time against the Philadelphia Eagles throughout his career, and that's through the Russ and the Geno Lock era. So, and honestly, I think that was the most impressive one he's had as Seahawks coach against the Eagles. So, but now overall for the year against the spread, I'm now 107, 111 with 6 pushes, and straight up now I'm 134-90. So that equals 49.1% against the spread. Straight up, that equals now 59.8%. I was going into the night last night with a 60 winning percentage. Unfortunately, Seattle won, so that knocked me down back under 60%. So it's definitely going to be an interesting 3 weeks here. I feel solid about my picks, sort of how crazy this season has been. I objectively think that I don't know if I'll even crack 63, 64. I'm going to shoot for 61, 62 at this point with the final 48 games on deck. But let me get right into my picks, and I'll talk about some of the other games as I go through them. So on Thursday, when the 7-7 New Orleans Saints travel to Los Angeles to take on the 7-7 Los Angeles Rams, the Los Angeles Rams are 4-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Rams here -4 and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. Then on Saturday, on the Saturday doubleheader, when the 8-6 Cincinnati Bengals go to Pittsburgh to take on the 7-7 Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cincinnati Bengals are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Cincinnati here -2.5 and Cincinnati straight up. And in the Saturday night game exclusively on Peacock, just for everybody out there, you will not have this game on television. You will have to have the Peacock app or some other website that if you use them to watch this game, because it's going to be exclusively streamed on Peacock. They picked a horrible game, in hindsight now because of what's happened with Justin Herbert. But the 8-6 Buffalo Bills travel to Los Angeles to take on the 5-9 Los Angeles Chargers. The Buffalo Bills are 11-point favorites in this game. Give me Buffalo here -11 and Buffalo straight up. Then on Sunday, Christmas Eve, when the 8-6 Indianapolis Colts travel to Atlanta to take on the 6-8 Atlanta Falcons, the Indianapolis Colts are 2-point favorites in this game. Give me the Indianapolis Colts here -2 and the Indianapolis Colts straight up. Then the next game, when the 7-7 Seattle Seahawks travel to Tennessee to take on the 5-9 Tennessee Titans. The Seattle Seahawks are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Seattle here, -2.5, and Seattle straight up. Then the next game, when the 10-4 Detroit Lions go to Minnesota to take on the 7-7 Minnesota Vikings. The Detroit Lions are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Detroit here, -3, and Detroit straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-10 Washington Commanders travel to New York to take on the 5-9 New York Jets. The New York Jets are 3-point favorites in this game. In my second biggest upset of the week, I'm going to take Washington here +3 and Washington outright to beat the New York Jets. Then the next game, when the 6-8 Green Bay Packers travel to Carolina to take on the 2-12 Carolina Panthers. The Green Bay Packers are 5-point favorites in this game. Give me Green Bay here -5 and Green Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 9-5 Cleveland Browns go to Houston to take on the 8-6 Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take Cleveland here +2.5 and Cleveland straight up. And I'm just going to put this caveat out there. I'm going to take Cleveland regardless if C.J. Stroud plays or does not. So just so there's any confusion or any caveats, I'm going to take Cleveland here +2.5 regardless. Then the next game, when the 8-6 Jacksonville Jaguars travel to Tampa Bay in a west side of Florida versus east side of Florida battle to take on the 7-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 1-point favorites in this game. Give me Tampa Bay here -1 and Tampa Bay straight up. If Trevor Lawrence clears concussion protocol, I will probably take Jacksonville with that moment. So just wanted to put that out there for everybody. So that will be a caveat there. But then the next game, when the 3-11 Arizona Cardinals travel to Chicago to take on the 5-9 Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Chicago Bears here straight up to win, but I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals +4.5. Then the next game, when the 10-4 Dallas Cowboys travel to Miami to take on the 10-4 Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are 1.5-point favorites in this game. I feel like I'm walking back into a trap here, and I could be very much right or wrong depending on what happens. But for probably only the last time, I will do it again. I will step on the rake. I will take the Dallas Cowboys here +1.5 and the Dallas Cowboys straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-11 New England Patriots travel to Denver to take on the 7-7 Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Denver here -6.5 and Denver straight up. Then on Christmas, the final 3 games, when the 6-8 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Kansas City to take on the 9-5 Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are 10-point favorites in this game. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs here -10 and the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-9 New York Giants travel to Philadelphia to take on the 10-4 Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are 10.5-point favorites in this game. In the ultimate Italian game for the DeVitos, the Siriannis, and Big Doms, the Philadelphia Eagles are 10.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles here to win straight up, but I'm going to take the New York Giants +10.5. And then lastly, in a probable Super Bowl preview for a lot of people, when the 11-3 Baltimore Ravens travel to San Francisco to take on the 11-3 San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Baltimore Ravens here +5.5, but I will take the San Francisco 49ers straight up. All right, it's time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Los Angeles Rams over the New Orleans Saints. This is a game to where, look, the New Orleans Saints, let's give the New Orleans Saints defense credit. Derek Carr has had 3 games and 14 starts where the Saints have held teams to under 7 points. He only had one of those games with the Raiders, and he played 142 of those. So, when you look at what the Saints have been able to do, it hasn't been pretty. It's ugly. Derek Carr threw for another 3,000 yards. He's the only quarterback in his first 12 seasons with 12 consecutive 3,000-yard seasons. Juwan Johnson caught his second touchdown of the year and they held the Giants' offense, which again is not impressive by any stretch of the imagination or really great, to their second lowest total yards of the year, and they sacked Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito 7 times in the game, so that defense was absolutely fantastic. But the reason why I'm going with the Rams is that the Rams right now are moving with an offense with Cooper, with Puka, with Kyron Williams, who has ran for over 140-plus yards in 3 of his last 5 games. There was a horrible busted coverage. They let Matthew Stafford get a wide-open touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp. And the Rams, even with their offensive line, the injuries of receivers, the Tutu Atwell concussion, Tyler Higbee being kind of up and down, they're 11th in passing yards, and they have the 11th best passing offense in the league. So I think Sean McVay is doing a very nice job for the Rams so far this year. And that Rams defense did a fantastic job that until those last 2 touchdown drives with Jacoby Brissett, they held the Commanders to a grand total of 136 total net yards before the last 2 drives where they got the 2 scores. The Rams have won 3 straight games against the Saints at home. They have won 3 straight overall. The Rams have won 3 straight overall. And the last times the Saints won in Los Angeles, you have to go back to December 4th of 1994. So this is one of those games to where, look, the Saints and Rams, weird Thursday night game. This feels like the Rams-Raiders, even though the Saints are a much better team than that Raiders team was going into that game. But it's very interesting how this game is shaping up. And I know the Saints defense is going to be legit. I know the Rams defense, it's had talent and it's had moments. But in this type of game where if you're going to go with the offensive coaching versus the defensive coaching, I'm going to take Sean McVay at home to outcoach Dennis Allen on the road in this type of game because the Saints have not on the road very often been playing very well. And I think, with that Rams defense, with the confidence they have, and with the way Stafford is moving that ball, I think the Rams get this victory in at least a 5 to more point game. Would I be surprised if the Saints won? No, because I think if the Saints can get some turnovers, the Rams through the second half of the game against the Commanders really kind of let the rope drip down a little bit and made the game a lot closer than it had to be. I think a short week, having to travel out to the West Coast, again, there are a lot of Saints fans going there, so, but I would take the Rams in this game. Better coach, a little bit better scheme, and I just trust McVay with Stafford's offense to put enough dents into the Saints defense that I can't think Derek Carr will respond with how the Saints' weapons are currently constructed, especially with the Chris Olave injury that probably might not make him available for Thursday, which would be huge, especially with the other injuries on offense that they have. So, I also want to shout out quickly Alvin Kamara. He has the franchise record for 1,000 scrimmage yard seasons. I think he has 7 now. Job well done to him. So, but that's like the Los Angeles Rams here, -4 on the Los Angeles Rams, straight up. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is one to where, look, the Bengals, Jake Browning has been very good. He is the 5th quarterback since 1950 with a passer rating of 95+ in his first 4 career starts. He's also completed 76% of his passes, which is the second highest completion percentage in his first 4 starts. And I was really impressed with how, at the end of the game, even with, again, it was a massive injury day for the Bengals on Saturday afternoon because they lost DJ Ivey and DJ Reader to significant injuries. And Jamar Chase has a separated shoulder, or a sprained AC joint and a separated shoulder, which is likely going to take him out this week, and it could take him out for the rest of the season, which is massive for them because they are right now the 6th seed, but with their schedule of the Browns, the Chiefs, and Pittsburgh, that could possibly knock them out of the playoffs, even though I feel like Zach Taylor's done the best coaching job of his career. In my opinion, with this offense and what he's had to deal with this season with the offensive and defensive injuries. And I want to shout out DJ Hill, back-to-back games with an interception. That was a crazy interception that Nick Mullins threw because he literally threw it at DJ Hill, but it didn't hit the ground. It literally caromed off his big gut, and he was able to get the pick, which was a huge play in the game. And, look, I want to shout out TJ Watt. He has leading the league in sacks, 16 sacks, and he has the 5th most sacks through his first 7 seasons. He's really been him and Hayward have been the objectively bright spots of this defense for most of the year. The Steelers' offense is averaging its lowest points per game since 1970, so since the merger. And it's just objectively bad to watch. And you would think, like, with the Bengals here with this opportunity, when you look at it saying, my goodness, there's no Jamar Chase, no Cam Taylor-Britt, no DJ Reader, no DJ Ivey. You're playing a backup quarterback who just a couple weeks ago, you kicked the tar out of in a 16-10 game. I don't think anybody's going to give them any confidence because what Mike Tomlin said on Monday, which I thought was very concerning, was that they're putting Mason Rudolph in there. And what that would tell me is Kenny Pickett is nowhere near in the plans. Because I would have thought you would have said on Monday, hey, Kenny might be able to come back. The fact that Mike Tomlin went up there and said Mason Rudolph's going to be starting is just telling me, okay, it's going to be another week. And at that point, if they drop to 7-8, they still have a slight chance, but would you bring Kenny back? And I don't know if I would. And the Steelers' defense, the other big issue as well, is they've given up over 150-plus rushing yards in 2 of their last 3 games. And it's also the worst point differential in the Mike Tomlin era, which is kind of surprising because, it's not a lot, but it shows you that, like, if Pittsburgh can win a lot of grimy, tough games, But if they're going to get beat, they get beat very badly. And also, I think the other interesting stat, I think Mike Tomlin now has lost to his last 4 or 5 rookie coaches on either the offensive or defensive side of the ball, which is kind of surprising, especially with how Mike Tomlin's reputation has been throughout the league through his tenure. And the other problem is the Steelers just cannot run the ball. They have 2 top 30 rushers in Jalen and Najee, and they just seem like they can't get any momentum going. And it just looks sad. George Pickens doesn't know how to block or doesn't really care how to block. And it's just something to where like the Bengals are playing with a better momentum and confidence. To where Pittsburgh, I feel like Mike Tomlin's probably going to have his first losing season as a coach, which is very frustrating for a lot of Steeler fans. And I think he will probably keep his job. I don't know if they should, because I don't think the optimism is there moving forward. They need to get an Eric Bieniemy or Byron Leftwich, in my opinion, to improve that offense. But if that doesn't happen, even with Kenny Pickett, I just feel like, Mike Tomlin at the end of next year might have a mutual parting of ways, or he might get fired. Because this Steelers team is hitting a low that I do not think it's going to be as easy as, the last couple of years of the optimism to move forward out of. So that's like Cincinnati, you're -2.5, and Cincinnati straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's just be honest here. Okay, look, this game, let me just say, the Buffalo Bills are going to kick the tar out of the Chargers. Okay, like, it's really not even a contest. I do want to shout out Josh Allen. The fewest completions and attempts in a win for his career. He has 10 games now of passing and rushing touchdown this season. That's an NFL record. They held the Cowboys to their fewest total yards and a half since 2010. And James Cook had a career high in scrimmage yards and rushing yards, and his total scrimmage yards were more yards in the Dallas Cowboys game the entire day. So, the Buffalo Bills, like I said before, they are going to, if they can get in as a wild card or the AFC East division champion, which is still very possible, they will win, or they will be the scariest team, because I feel like they have found a momentum and balance, even with all the injuries, to play very good football. So, and the Chargers, look, they gave their franchise worst in points. They fired Brandon Staley, Tom Telesco. Easton Stick had 3 touchdowns and a pick. It didn't look bad, but that was all garbage time. Will Clapp had to go on the IR, and they had this other center who played okay. Buffalo's rolling, and the Chargers' charge is gone. I guess, no one's going to circle that wagon, and the Chargers are just trying to get to the end of this season. And objectively, I think the interesting thing about the Chargers is, what do you think of this job, in the sense that there's a lot of talent there, but they have the second worst cap situation going into next year, and they're going to have to make some significant cuts or try to start playing the Saints shell game, and I don't know if a coach wants to do that. And I don't know if whoever you put in there, if you can move with that talent or just that kind of idea. I don't know if next year is going to automatically be great, or like you have a long-term future, moving forward. So, who knows? So, but that's what, like, Buffalo are -11 and Buffalo straight up. Really not a lot to talk about the game. I just wanted to bring up those few little nuggets. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts over the Atlanta Falcons. This is one to where, look, the Indianapolis Colts have been one of the more impressive stories in the league. And again, I would say this. I think Kevin Stefanski is going to win Coach of the Year. My second vote would be for Shane Steichen. My third probably would be for D'Amico Ryans. Because I feel like what Shane Steichen has been able to do with Gardner Minshew getting a 6-4 overall record, and technically Gardner should have, and he was part of all 8 wins that they've had, has just been absolutely sensational. No Jonathan Taylor, no Michael Pittman, who is in concussion protocol, and also, just very quickly, DeMonte Casey, the Pittsburgh Steelers safety, has been suspended for the rest of the year, if people hadn't found that out. And look, I'm going to shout out DJ. The Colts now have 19 straight games with a turnover, or with a takeaway. That's the longest active streak in the NFL. DJ Montgomery got his first touchdown. It was a nice way to bounce back. And EJ Speed had 10 total tackles. The only thing I was concerned about the Colts on Saturday night was Matt Gay has had a tough few weeks kicking the ball, and he missed an extra point. He missed a couple big kicks. He missed a crucial kick that would have that pretty much would have iced the game clearly. Pittsburgh's offense really didn't do anything. And for the Falcons, after what we saw on Sunday afternoon, when you were playing in a light, empty blue stadium out of like 60 people that showed up for the Carolina Panthers out of just anger and frustration, which I don't blame them. You lost to a Panther team that kicked 3 field goals. You lost to them. Desmond Ridder, in every one of the road games he started to finish, he only put up 1 touchdown in every one of his road games. He had one of the worst picks of the year, which cost them the game, and against a Panthers defense, which has been pretty much bad in most ways besides yards, where let's give Ifero, or Ijero Ifero, and I know I botched his name horribly, and I apologize for anybody out there, he has done a fantastic job because the Panthers have the 3rd best defense in total yards the entire year. Not just against the Falcons, the entire year. But the Falcons only gained 212.5 yards of total offense a game against the 2-win Panthers. Arthur Smith is a FedEx dolt. He is a FedEx entitled man that basically should be driving his father's FedEx cars because he cannot coach football. And they just said today that they are benching Desmond Ridder again. So at this point, they have no quarterback situation, and Bijan Robinson ran for a grand total of 11 yards, and if you take out the Jonnu Smith play, they ran 51 total plays against the Panthers and got 148 total yards the entire game. Arthur Smith, the FedEx entitled Nepo baby that he is an absolute disgrace to the head coaching of the offensive profession. He's basically Brandon Staley on the offensive side. And the fact that, again, I'm not saying that Desmond Ridder shouldn't have got benched or whatever, but Desmond Ridder, like what are you doing? This is the second time you've done this. And it's like, Taylor Heineke's not going to solve the problem. It's not. Like, I would have rather seen Logan Woodside for for crying out loud. Logan Woodside is somebody new. If you didn't believe in Desmond Ridder, you don't believe in Taylor Heineke, that's fine. Put Logan Woodside out there. At least Falcon fans can say, it's somebody new. We don't know what Logan Woodside could do. And it's just that bad. Like, look, the Falcons are at home, and, they've had a little bit of confidence, but it's just like, with this Falcons team, they lost the one game with Heineke at home. They choked the game against Tampa at home. So that home field advantage that Falcons fans and prognosticators probably have been picking most of the year, that's starting to rub away. And I objectively just feel like with the Colts, they have just been fundamentally rolling throughout this. So, and also, just for the record, the Colts have won 5 of the last 6 games against the Falcons in this series. So that's why I feel pretty confident the Colts taking the Falcons in this. Sounds like Indianapolis here -2, and Indianapolis straight up. The next game, the Seattle Seahawks over the Tennessee Titans. This is one to where they finally last night against an Eagles defense, which has not been doing that well. They were able to run the ball. They ran for over 150 yards. And Seattle's defense going into last night has had a very bad defense. They've been very bottom 10 defense in most statistical categories. And I think for Seattle, it was a confidence builder because you could see DK, Lockett, DK Metcalf had the catch of the year. Lockett Metcalf might have had the throw and catch of the year just in that situation of how tight that coverage was and how tiny of a keyhole Drew Lock had to throw that football. Also, they completed their longest drive of the season last night on a 92-yard offensive drive. So kudos for that. And objectively, now with the NFC playoff picture, with them getting that victory, which I did not think they would get, the Seahawks and Rams very much have a chance to both be the 6 and 7 seeds in the NFC, which I think for the teams that are going to play them, that will be an interesting spot. So, and they're playing a Titan team, and the reason why I'm going with Seattle is they have more confidence. I feel like that win boosted up their confidence, where with the Titans, they didn't play bad, but they collapsed a 13-point lead in the second half. Elijah Molden had his second career pick 6. It was a horrible throw by Case Keenum. Will Levis scored his first rushing touchdown, but he got sacked 7 more times, and it was the lowest amount of yards, of total yards of Will Levis at quarterback, and no receiver for the Titans had more than 62 yards. And Derrick Henry, for his career, he had the lowest yards per rush in his career. And the Titans, look, Will Levis is a guy that if you watch him, he objectively has some things you like. And that win against Miami was massive for his confidence and the building block. But objectively, after, throughout the season, you could look at the Falcons game. The Falcons and Dolphins are his highlights. The Steelers, the Bucks, this Texan game, he got the rushing touchdown, scored his first rushing touchdown of the year. I'm not sold that Will Levis is going to be a long-term guy. They're probably going to keep him. but they probably need to bring in a veteran quarterback because Mike Vrabel is going to have 2 consecutive losing seasons now. And even though it doesn't seem like they're going to fire Mike Vrabel's seat is going from lukewarm to warm going into this next year. Because you can't have the way they collapsed last year, and in this kind of awkward year to where they had some moments. They had Ryan Tannehill. He ended up getting hurt. They went with the rookie. He showed some promise in that game against the Falcons, and he's shown some clips and flashes very briefly through his starts and his tenure now. And Malik Willis, the worst draft pick in NFL history, or one of the worst draft picks in NFL history, still sitting on the bench that hasn't thrown a touchdown in his NFL career. It's like, you look at this Titans team and just go, I don't know if they're going to have enough energy to push the rest of the way through. They don't really have a great secondary. They have Jeffrey Simmons on the defensive side of the ball. They have, and that's pretty much it. I like the Nico Autry. He's a good defender for the Titans. And I think Skoronski has some potential. He definitely needs to work a lot more on his pass blocking, but his run blocking is sensational. But the Titans right now are just going to go through the motions. And I think even though Seattle only has 1 road win against the Titans in franchise history, I think the Seahawks grind out this victory with the return of Geno, giving them the confidence of saying that they are in this playoff race, and if everything goes to I think it could go, the Seahawks should be back in the playoffs once again. So, but that's why I like Seattle here, -2.5, and Seattle straight up. Also, by the way, anybody out there, watch the post-game interview with Drew Lock. Not the biggest fan of him as a quarterback, but that was just a great interview. Could not recommend that to anybody enough to watch Drew Lock's post-game interview after the Eagles last night. So that's like Seattle -2.5 and Seattle straight up. Next game, the Detroit Lions over the Minnesota Vikings. This is one to where, look, Jared Goff had a career high in passing touchdowns of 5. Sam Laporta is the 4th tight end to have 3 touchdowns in a game, joining Eric Green, Gronk, and Joseph Fourier, former Lion himself. And he also has 9 touchdowns overall, which is the 3rd most by a rookie tight end ever. And he's the 3rd rookie tight end in history with 70-plus receptions, which is insane. To look at how good Sam Laporta has been able to do for this offense, he is arguably their 2nd best overall weapon. And in my opinion, he's a top 5 tight end. The only 4 tight ends I would tell anybody that if you watch Sam Laporta is Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, and Dallas and T.J. Hawkinson. Right, yeah. So Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, T.J. Hawkinson, Sam Laporta. I think he has been that good. He has been that consistent, and they have found themselves a great gem at tight end. Also for the Lions, they are now undefeated in prime time. They always somehow seem that when they're at home or in the big stage, they play very well. It's also the first time they have held a team under 20 points in the last 6 games. And Jahmyr Gibbs, look, it was his 2nd career 100-yard rushing game. Job well done to him. I think both Gibbs and Laporta have very much shown that Brad Holmes did a very good job in drafting these 2 pieces, because when they are on their game, they can play very well. And what I will also say is the Lions kept their 2nd tier of the NFC status. I think I said this last week, to where the Cowboys are kind of faltering, or you could argue the Lions are kind of creeping up there, or it might be just San Francisco off the top and everybody else at the bottom. And if you wanted to make that point, go right ahead. But I think the Lions, if you want to put the Cowboys and Eagles kind of in that, they're falling out of that king of the mountain spot in that top tier. The Lions have firmly solidified themselves, in my opinion, as in that 2nd tier, that the rest of those wildcard teams, maybe outside of the Rams, I think the Rams could beat them, that the Lions should be able to get their first playoff win in over 30, their 2nd playoff win in 50-plus years. Because I think that's how great they looked. And Isaiah Buggs, congrats to him as well. He got his first fumble recovery of his career, and he returned to 36 yards, which basically ended the game for the Broncos at that point. And when you look at the Vikings, look, Jordan Addison's been fantastic. He's had 64 receptions, 824 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He's definitely in the offensive rookie of the year conversation, and the Vikings have found themselves a fantastic number 2. If he keeps playing as well, he might be a borderline number 1 to some teams moving forward. So that's fantastic. Ty Chandler, who was the backup running back to Alexander Madison, who got hurt, had a career-high in scrimmage yards of 157 yards. And one of the most impressive things I have seen is Daniil Hunter, who got a $17 million fully guaranteed 1-year rework contract. He's 2nd in the league in sacks. So whatever he does going forward, if he re-signs with the Vikings, if he does anything else, he's at least guaranteed himself, in my opinion, a nice contract extension or a brand new contract that I really cannot complain with after what he has done this year on this Vikings defense, because he's been primarily the most dominant pass rusher and probably their best overall defender they've had the entire year. So, look, they're going to go with Nick Mullins, who played a Nick Mullins type game to where you watch Nick Mullins make some throws and go, okay, he got some, moments. Remember, I think I told you all last week that basically Nick Mullins and Andrew Luck were basically identical in stats through about 17 starts. Obviously, Andrew Luck had one more, and Andrew Luck's clearly the better quarterback. But the biggest problem with what happened with the game was the Vikings, and this is for every Eagle fan out there, they had to be thrilled, the Vikings could not execute the shove. And it's telling you that, again, you should not have Brandon Powell, a 5 foot, or an under 5 foot guy, like 160 pounds soaking wet, trying to shove your quarterback forward when it's Nick Mullins. And that's basically what cost the Vikings the game. They had like a 10 plus point lead going into the fourth quarter. They blew it at the end because they could not execute late game situational football with one of the most pathetic brotherly pathetic shove attempts I've ever seen. And, look, and it's the Vikings at home, so I thought about taking Minnesota with the 3. It was 3.5. But after what I saw from the Lions, what I saw from the Vikings, I think the Lions going into a, indoor stadium, they know, US Bank Stadium, with the confidence they should have after the Bronco game, they should be able to go against Minnesota, who are still fighting for their playoff lives. And it's like if Nick Mullins can outplay Jared Goff, or, Jared Goff kind of turns back into the turnover-prone quarterback he's been for the last few weeks, maybe the Vikings can pull it off. I just think with the Lions, they gained confidence. They have Michael Badgley at kicker. They have a good overall defensive effort. And I just think for the Lions, they'll play a more fundamentally clean, consistent game over the Minnesota Vikings. So that's why I like Detroit here -3, and Detroit straight up. The next game, the Washington Commanders over the New York Jets. This is one of those games to where when you look at the Commanders and Jets, something has to give here. It's a bottom 2 offense against a bottom 2 defense. And objectively, look, I talked about the Jets before. They had 37 total yards through 3 quarters on Sunday. The Jets quarterbacks got hit 12 times. They've scored 13 offensive touchdowns in 14 games. And to me, at least with the Commanders, I've at least seen with Howe and Brissett, they can move the football. And, and look, I will say this. If somehow over the next couple of days, Aaron Rodgers decides to play, even though they have no shot, they're officially eliminated, longest streak in the NFL, longest streak in North American sports, 13 consecutive seasons without making the postseason. I objectively feel that that Rodgers should not play. But if he does play, I'll probably take the Jets because I think Aaron Rodgers going up against Howell or Brissett, that's going to be the difference. But if it's going to be the game that I think it's going to be, and it's going to be Sam Howell going up against Simeon or Zach Wilson if he clears protocol, I think the Commanders win this game. It's an ugly game. It's a horrible game that basically whoever loses actually gets the benefit from it. But I'm going to take the Commanders here because I just don't think of how inept that Jets offense is. I do not think that they can move the football. And I think Sam Howell with that team, even though, again, I know the Jets have a much better defense than the Commanders do, I think Sam Howell can make a few more throws and make a few more plays than I think Simeon would be able to do against the Commanders' defense, however bad it is. So. But that's why I like the Washington Commanders here. +3 and the Washington Commanders straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Carolina Panthers. This is one to where, look, Green Bay played somewhat well on offense. They put up 20 points. The Packers, though, it was the defense that really let them down on Sunday. They are now 1-3 overall when a defense has given up over 400 yards. Romeo Doubs and Jalen Reed are a very nice combo wide receiver. Both average about 11 yards per reception, and they have 13 total touchdowns combined. And the Packers running backs are banged up. I know Aaron Jones, I think he tried to give it a go, and A.J. Dillon has broken his thumb, so he was out. But the defense gave up, for the first time, a perfect passer rating in Lambeau to Baker Mayfield. Only Aaron Rodgers is the only other quarterback at Lambeau Field to have a perfect passer rating game for the Packers. At Lambeau Field. And look, I think one of the big reasons why this Packers defense has been struggling is that Jair Alexander, one of the best corners in the league, he's had an injury that's had him out the last 6 games, and it's shown through how inept that defense has been, or some of the busted plays or big explosive plays that have been given up on the Bucs offense and the Giants offense the last couple of weeks without him there. And look, for the Panthers, they played in an empty stadium basically. About 20, probably 2,000 people showed up in a rainstorm through that nor'easter that came up through the northeast. A couple little nuggets I'm going to shout out for the Panthers. Taylor Morton now has started the third most games by a Panthers player overall. Eddie Pinheiro now has the third most field goals made. And also it's sad because that's mostly what the Panthers offense does on most Sundays. But, and look, I look at it this way. When you look at this game, I think the Packers should win this game because the Panthers are not a very good football team, and that was just the sadness of Atlanta than maybe how really good Carolina is. Happy for Bryce Young that he got his second career win, but he only did it for another 160 yards against the Falcons defense. And objectively, I was not impressed at all. So, could the Panthers put up a fight? Sure. Look, Jordan Love's a rookie. The Panthers have a little bit of confidence. They played a little bit better since Frank Reich's got fired. But I think the Packers, they have Love. They have more offensive talent. Maybe they get Christian Watson back. And I just don't think with this Panthers offensive line, it's not going to do that great. And if it's not raining and storming, I think the Packers get a nice, clean, consistent win against the Panthers. So that's all I Green Bay here, -5, and Green Bay straight up. The next game, the Cleveland Browns over the Houston Texans. This is one to where, look, Devin Singletary, shout out to him. He had a season high in scrimmage yards. Kaimi Fairbairn was the MVP of the game. He was 4-4 on field goals. And boy, did they really miss him. Because honestly, if he was in the game against Jacksonville, they probably get that tie. And who knows if they win in overtime. But if they win in overtime in that game, the Texans are leading the AFC South at this point, which is massive. And honestly, I thought for DeMeco Ryans, this was his most impressive win of his tenure. I know it was against the Titans, who aren't that impressive. But I took the Titans because I didn't think Case Keenum, with how Case Keenum's been. Case Keenum's not a bad backup quarterback. You could argue he's a top 5 backup quarterback in the league. But after he did that pick 6 to Molden, I felt like, okay, they're not going to pull this off. And they won without their top 2 wide receivers in Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Noah Brown was their best receiver at 82 yards. Dalton Schultz made the catch of the game, taking it away from, I think, the one Titan I think it was Hooker. No. But the one Titan defender, which basically could end the game. And then went without their quarterback. So kudos to DeMeco Ryan. That is a win that the Texans usually would not have gotten over the last couple of years with Lovey or David Culley. I also want to shout out Jonathan Grenard to 2.5 sacks. And this is one of those things to where I don't know if Stroud's going to play, but if he goes through the protocol and he's very limited in practice throughout the week, even if he can get cleared, I'm still going to take the Browns because I think the Browns right now are the one team that is in the playoff picture that you would not want to play with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco had a 3-interception game. It was bad. It was pretty pathetic. And though he did throw for 212 yards in the fourth quarter, which is the most by a Browns quarterback in 45 years. And I think Kevin Stefanski is going to win Coach of the Year because over a quarter of their roster on offense and defense are on the IR this year. And here's the most impressive thing for Kevin Stefanski and the Browns is that he's the first coach since the Marty Ball Browns back in the mid to late 80s to have multiple winning seasons for the Browns. Think about how bad you have to be, and you get a second winning season, and you're the first guy since Schottenheimer to have multiple winning seasons for the Cleveland Browns. That's amazing. And look, he's also had to deal with a lot of offensive turnover. Cleveland's offense this year has committed the most offensive turnovers in the entire year. But the best thing that they've been able to do is they have the best third down defense in the entire league. And it's just one of those aspects to where I'm going to trust the Browns defense to play another great game against a weakened and beat up Texan team, regardless if it's Keenum or not, Keenum or Stroud. I don't know if Nico plays, and which is Nico Collins and Noah Brown going up against that Cleveland secondary with talent they have. I think the Browns go into Houston and get a gritty, tough victory. They went into Houston last year with Deshaun and won. And also, fun fact, just for the record, Deshaun's contract is a horrible contract. Because, if I did my math correctly here, and anybody can check me on this, if the Browns win their final 3 games, which is very well possible, they win out. That would have meant that Deshaun Watson's 8-4. In the 22 games that he was not playing, either fully or not at all, they're 500. So, Deshaun Watson doesn't really have that much of an impact on the Browns through at least the last 2 years with 4 other quarterbacks. Those 4 quarterbacks and him, Deshaun's better, but they've won with 4 different quarterbacks, and if they had any other, if they had Joe that entire time, I think they would have had a better record than Deshaun's through the 8-4, for Deshaun. So it's just a factor of if they win out, that's a 500 football team in 2 years without Deshaun Watson, who is the only guaranteed contract in the sport. Just for the record. So, but that's why I like Cleveland there, plus 2.5, and Cleveland straight up. The next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is one to where I am taking Tampa Bay based on the fact of Trevor Lawrence's injury. They, on Sunday night against Baltimore, were absolutely snake-bitten with their offensive possessions. They had 180 total yards and no point. They didn't score any points. They were the first offense all year to have 180 yards and a half, and they couldn't score anything. They have the 6th worst rushing offense in the league. And I have to apologize to Christian Kirk because, honestly, Christian Kirk has a lot more value than I thought he would, going into this. Trevor Lawrence, he did have one nice thing. He had a career-long throw of 65 yards on that great busted coverage to Jamal Agnew, the very interesting scat back that they have. And for Brandon McManus, who had 2 big misses early on, that was the first time since week 3 that Brandon McManus missed 2 field goals in a game. And they've lost 3 straight overall. And objectively, it's one of those things to where I don't think Beathard could beat the Bucs. And you could argue even with Trevor Lawrence, who's dealing with an ankle sprain, who's going through the concussion protocol. Trevor may not be in his right sense. To be fair, he hasn't played that well overall since he's dealt with the ankle sprain over the last 2 weeks. He's committed at least 5 turnovers in the last 2 games, which basically, killed drives, and he made a decision that, objectively was stunning. He didn't spike the ball and threw a 2-yard out route 5 yards from the end zone, and the receiver got tackled, or I think it was Parker Washington got tackled in bounds, and objectively it cost them, 10 points at the end of the game. And Tampa's offense, to be fair, has done very well. Tampa has done very well. They have played consistent ball, and I objectively feel that, Tampa, with how they've been playing, they should be able to go against the Jacksonville defense, which has been showing a lot of holes, without Trevor if he doesn't play. If Trevor does play, I probably would take them. I'll probably take the Jags, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa won even with Trevor playing. But I'll take Tampa here at home with how they have been effective. And also, just to be fair, if Trevor does play, the Jags have been clearly this year a much better road team than a home team. It doesn't make any sense. They have one of the worst home field advantages in the sport. Everybody can go down to Jacksonville and somehow get a win. So that I don't know. So that I know. So again, like I said, I'm going to take Tampa, playing better, more consistent, have defensive issues that I'm kind of concerned about, but I'll take Baker over Beathard in a type of shootout game. But if Lawrence does play, I'll probably take Jacksonville with that caveat. So that's like Tampa Bay here, -1, Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, Chicago Bears over the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona ran for a season high in rushing yards, which was incredibly impressive with Connor, the other backup running back, Kyler Murray. They also scored a season high in points. They gave up a season high in points as well, which is tough. And Trey McBride, he was the breakout star of the offense for the game. He had his second most receiving yards. He had a touchdown in the game. The Cardinals are a bottom 5 offense, a bottom 5 overall offense though, but a top 10 rushing attack. And I think the key thing is, I think the Cardinals have shown a lot of fight. And they've shown that, with a few wins, that Gannon will probably get a second year. I don't know how great he's going to be after that, or, after this, but who knows? But I am going to take the Bears here based on the Bears defense. Since Montez Sweat got traded by the Washington Commanders to this Bears defense, the Bears have been a top 5 defense in most statistical categories. They've gone 3 straight games with 3 or more turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. That's incredibly impressive. And the big reason why they lost to the Browns was, for the first time in 5 games, the Bears did not rush the team for over 100 yards, but they held the Browns' rushing offense, which has Kareem Hunt, Jerome Ford, and some decent players, to a season low of 29 rushing yards. And Chicago and Arizona have split the last 6 games overall in this series. And when you look at this game, I'm going to take Chicago based on the fact that Arizona, I believe, has to come over to Chicago. And I trust Eberflus defensively, and I trust Justin Fields to make a few more plays of how things have been going recently compared to what I've seen out of the Cardinals. Could the Cardinals win? Yes, because Kyler's a better quarterback. Kyler, they've shown flashes that they're still fighting for Gannon through this spot. But objectively, I do not see how, objectively, I think this game will be close, but I think with the Bears' defense, I'm going to trust Eberflus to call a better defensive game than Gannon. And I think the Bears just have fundamentally a more well-rounded game that I've seen with the Bears' defense that I've seen over the Cardinals. So, but that's like Chicago here, straight up at Arizona plus 4.5. Next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the Miami Dolphins. This is a game that's very weird, where both these teams are both 10-4, but both these teams only have 1 win against a winning team this year. And look, the Cowboys, it was the worst game they had played, even though objectively it's weird. If you look at the Cowboys' road resume, they play very much like the Atlanta Falcons overall this year. They play like the Falcons on the road. Offense, points, it's stunning how bad Dak Prescott looks like Desmond Ridder on the road this year, and the Cowboys' offense and defense does not play that well overall on the road. Micah Parsons only had 2 tackles, and it just doesn't where, the Cowboys, it was such a jarring loss that I just think, and look, the Dolphins were phenomenal. Raheem Mostert, job well done to him. 20 total touchdowns this year. It's a new career record for him. Fun fact, though, he only scored 19 touchdowns through his first 8 seasons overall as a Niner and whatever other stops he had. He had 20 this season. Bradley Chubb had a career game. He had 3 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. And Miami's been rolling at home. They've been one of the better home teams this year. They have consistently dominated these bad opponents. And objectively, I feel like the Cowboys and Dolphins are the Spider-Man team. They're playing each other in a mirror. They're looking themselves in the mirror and saying one of these teams is going to have to win. And either team that wins is going to get a massive opportunity to compete for compete for a division and a 1 seed. If Miami wins, that basically would knock out the Dolphins from the division. And if the Cowboys win, it keeps them on pace with the Eagles, even though the Eagles still control their own destiny. But in this regard, I just feel like the Cowboys have won 6 of the last 7 against the Dolphins. And I just feel like the Cowboys, I feel, have enough confidence in them. And hopefully they pick themselves up off the mat instead of going from the cold in Buffalo to the heat of Miami, which you could argue could have the same effect, but just oppositely. That the Dallas Cowboys should win this game. I've trusted what Dak's been able to do. Dak, in the warmer areas, you could argue, San Francisco and Arizona, he did not play well. But playing in Miami, it's a different idea. I just feel like for the Dolphins, I feel like their defense going up against this type of Cowboys offense, how banged up they are, they're not the Jets. And if that offensive line injuries are still there, if that secondary is still banged up, if Javon and Jerome and all those guys still can't go, which I believe most of them won't be able to, the Cowboys should be able to capitalize on most of those opportunities that the Jets couldn't do. And I think that's going to be the difference in the game. Could the Dolphins win? Sure. Because the Dolphins, they have, if Tyreek gets back, Waddle, I don't know how those Cowboys corners, with Diggs, with Bland and Gilmore, are going to be able to stop them. And also that running game, look, they gave up over 260 yards on the ground. So having Raheem Mostert, who is the league leader in touchdowns, and Devon Achane with their speed, if it gets into a shootout, I'd take Miami, but I feel like the Cowboys defense should be able to make a few more plays that gets to it to have a turnover or two, which is the difference. So that's why I like Dallas here, plus 1.5, and Dallas straight up. Next game, the Denver Broncos over the New England Patriots. Look, Bailey Zappe's been phenomenal in the first half of these last two games. He is 31 of 40 for 347 yards. For 190, 290, or 347 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the second half, he's gone 11 of 19 for a grand total of 83 yards and 2 interceptions. And look, this is the worst record in Bill Belichick's entire tenure as a coach. It's probably going to be the end for him, in my opinion. But, you know, it's one of those things to where I think he could get a job with the Chargers. He has opportunities to get jobs. I just don't think, you know, does he want to do that? And the only one that I think that has the most intrigue to him would be the Los Angeles Chargers with Justin Herbert at quarterback. If not, I think Belichick's done. And the reason why I'm going with Denver is, look, Broncos defense gave up the most points they had in 6 weeks, but Sean Payton showing up Russell Wilson like that was completely out of line in that regard for what had happened. It's not like the Kansas City game, and look, I don't mind when coaches do that to an extent. Sometimes, you know, there's a part of me that, like, depending on how mad you are, you know, is it justified or not, and depending on the person as well. Like, Brian Daboll did that to Daniel Jones early in the year. I had no problem with that because Daniel Jones is a bum, and he sucks, and Tommy DeVito objectively is better. You could argue objectively is better. And, you know, Tyrod, I had a little bit of problem when he did it to Tyrod, but there was more reason because he basically botched that ending there, which could have probably won them the game. Even though you could argue, again, they had the bad PI, but that's, you know, months ago. But what Russell Wilson did there was objectively, like, he didn't do anything wrong. And when you watch the play, Sean Payton had 14 seconds to make a decision. And it just, like, I think, you know, for me, Russell Wilson, look, he's going to have the best quarterback stats in over 10 years for any Broncos quarterback. And they should be able to win out these last 3 games to get to 10-7. Again, they're probably not going to make the playoffs because they lost the games to Houston. They've lost most of the tiebreakers that won't get them there. So I can acknowledge that. But I think Sean Payton, objectively, if he, you know, gets a new quarterback, I hope that man fails miserably. Because I do not think Russell Wilson is the problem. Is Russell Wilson playing as well as he was in that 3-year run from 18 to 20 with Seattle? No, he's not that guy. But Russell Wilson has rebounded himself, in my opinion, that if he was an actual free agent, a genuine free agent, I do think between 7 to 12 teams objectively would let Russell Wilson come in, and he would be the starting quarterback, hands down, no questions asked, because he's that good, and he should be that respected as a quarterback. You know. And for Sean, it just makes him look like, you know, an absolute jerk, you know, a jerk and a clown. That, you know, there was a reason why, at times, you know, people didn't like you in New Orleans. There was a reason why, you know, you wanted to quit, and, you know, you looked at, you know, Russell Wilson. And all I'm going to say to everybody is that he never yelled at Drew Brees like that. And I know Drew Brees is probably a better pure passer than Russell Wilson, but there's one discerning quality between Drew Brees and Russell Wilson that I just want to put out there for people. Just food for thought, but I'll leave that alone. But to me, okay, the reason why you go for this game with the Broncos is they've just been fundamentally better. They're at home. They've been much more consistent at home. And Bill Belichick, the only 2 places where he does not have a winning record on the road for his career is in Miami and in Denver. He's only 500 in his career in Denver. This Patriot team, it has some talent. And, you know, it's played a little bit better with Zappe. But I feel like with this Denver defense, the way it's played, the way Zappe's playing in second halves, I think Russell should be able to make some plays against a decent Patriot defense. And Russell Wilson's had a very good history of beating the Patriots throughout his career. I think he's only lost the 1 time in 3 games that he had opportunities to. And I think he gets his 4th win against the Patriots this time around. So, but that's why I like Denver here, minus 6.5, and Denver straight up. Then the final 3 games, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chiefs had 3 more drops. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 100 yards from scrimmage, and Patrick Mahomes had 2 more interceptions. That weren't his fault. They were off Travis Kelce and Kadarius Toney's hands. And I like what the Chiefs have. And they're just playing a Raider team that, look, they played the Raiders. They had the most points in franchise history, the 2nd largest halftime lead in NFL history. John Jenkins and Jack Jones had fantastic defensive touchdowns. But this was the Charger team that was quitting. This is the Chief team that, kind of gained some confidence. But they basically should roll through the final 3 weeks of the season to get to a 12-5 season. And objectively, depending on what happens, could get the number 1 seed. But the Chiefs should be, back in the playoffs comfortably with a lot of people having confidence of, even though their regular season was awful, they should be able to, be one of the favorites because they have the most playoff experience out of any of the rosters in the league, top to bottom. So, could the game be interesting? Sure. I think the Raiders, look, I think Pierce had a great moment, but I think that high, it's kind of like the Daddy Daycare saying, every great high has a crashing down. And I feel like for Antonio Pierce, for as great as it was, as great a moment as it was, the Chiefs crashing down at home. So that's why I can't see here minus 10 and Kansas City straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the New York Giants. This is one to where, look, the Giants, Saquon Barkley had the 4th fewest yards in the total game. Tommy DeVito got knocked out of concussion, or he got put in the concussion protocol. He came back. The Saints defense really stifled the Giants offense. Darius Slayton led the team in all receiving yards. And I think for the Eagles, this is just one of those get-right games. To where, look, could the Giants win? Maybe. But after what I saw Tommy DeVito and after what I saw what Matt Patricia did with that defense, the Giants receiving core is nowhere near the Seattle one. And Tommy DeVito is not Drew Lock, just objectively, so far. I do want to shout out Jalen Hurts. He's tied the NFL single-season record with 14 rushing touchdowns. And the Eagles have their first 3-game losing streak since week 2 to 4 of the 2021 season. So this Eagles team is really reeling, no pun intended. And objectively, I feel like for the Eagles, they should, they should win. This game. Because I feel like with the Eagles, they were able to show a bit of their run game. They got some big third down stops, and they showed some defensive improvement outside of James Bradbury last night. But it's just saying, like, when you're watching this Giants team is just fundamentally not on the Eagles level. And as awkward as the Eagles may have been, I don't think this carries over to home game on Christmas night in the ultimate Italian game of Sirianni's, DeVitos, and Big Doms that we're going to have in South Philadelphia. Could the Giants be competitive? Sure. And that's one thing, because I think the Giants, they've shown some fight, and the Eagles just seem, with the Giants defense, can make a few turnovers. Jalen Hurts tied for the league leading turnovers. So if they get a couple of them, the Giants can hang around. But I think at the end of the day, you got to take the Eagles based on being at home, knowing what's at stake, knowing that they can get the number 2 seed more than likely with a winning out and be the first division champion in 18 years to repeat in the NFC East. And I think Philly wins based off of that. But I do think the Giants, I will take them plus 10.5 because the Giants have shown you through more weeks than not over the last few, they're more competitive than you think. And even that game against the Saints was more competitive than you think going into the third quarter. So that's why I like the Philadelphia Eagles here straight up, the New York Giants plus 10.5. And lastly, the game of the year for a lot of people, Ravens at 49ers. The reason why I'm going with the 49ers is I feel like for the 49ers, they have the better defense. They're healthier. They have Brock Purdy. They have McCaffrey. They're at home. And I just don't think the Ravens, losing Keaton Mitchell for the year of a torn ACL, the Ravens have only won 1 game all time in franchise history in San Francisco. And it's just one of those things to where Brock Purdy in these big-time, prime-time spots, Dallas, the Giants, the Eagles, the Jaguars, against these top teams, he has routinely shown you to show up and play very well. And again, I'm not saying Lamar can't play well. And I will tell everybody this, and everybody should agree. This is going to determine the MVP of the league. But I'm going to take the Niners here at home, more healthy, better talent, and I just trust them a lot more overall right now than I do the Ravens in this spot. So that's what I like San Francisco here, straight up at Baltimore plus 5.5. But that's it. So happy holidays to everyone, and best of luck to all coaches, fellow prognosticators, and fantasy players. And until next time, everybody, This is Matt the Fanatic signing off. Until then, everyone, so long.